As content creators, entrepreneurs, we often have loads of ideas and projects that we want to tackle. Sometimes we end up doing maybe a little bit too much than what we should do, but in the end, we just enjoy creating, right? But what happens when we get to a point where we feel burnt out and maybe not as creative as we'd like or as we should feel, or not should, but as we'd like to feel? And that's actually one of the things that brought me to today's episode, because I've seen lately lots of YouTubers who are saying, I'm taking a break from YouTube, and they're really big creators, but what's the reason behind that? Apparently it looks like they feel burnt out, or maybe they realize that they want to spend more time just prioritizing other things in their lives, or maybe they just sort of feel disconnected from the purpose that actually drew them or inspired them to start their entrepreneurial journey, their YouTube journey, their podcast. So with that in mind, I have Alitzel Guerrero, who's my guest today. She's a video podcast coach, and she's also the host of the Soulful Entrepreneur podcast. And we're going to be talking about a little bit, let's say, the soft CEO era. So I'm Yesenia, your video podcast and content creation coach, and this is a Focus and Bloom podcast, a place where we can learn and talk about ways that you can up-level your video podcast game one action at a time. Alitzel, welcome to the Focus and Bloom podcast. How are you?
Thank you. Yes, gracias. I love recording with you. This is our second interview, and I am so happy to be in this space with you. Thank you. I'm fine. I'm in Mexico now. It's 10 a.m. here. I'm enjoying the sun, the weather, everything. Hope it's not gonna be noisy, because Mexico City is super noisy. There are always like someone out there in the street selling something, and it's so loud, but it's part of the beauty. So we cannot control those things, right?
Exactly. And we both have our dogs on our here. So there might be some additional commentary in today's podcast. Thank you so much for being here. I really enjoyed, being able to connect with you at the end of last year, and being able to be on your podcast as well. But one of the things that I love your content overall, like I've been binging your episodes, but one of the things that I loved was a post that you shared at the beginning of the year, which said, F SMART goals. And when I first saw that, I'm like, what? And for those of you who've been following me for quite some time, I often talk about SMART goals. But I loved that you said, not everything is measurable. How can you quantify the joy on working with soul-aligned clients? How can you measure the quality of the connections you have built in 2024? How can you count the improvement in your eloquence, communication, and flow in your creative processes? Not everything is quantifiable, and that is okay. And as entrepreneurs, we got to dance between analytics, numbers, and inner growth. And I just love that, because it is so true. I mean, tell me more about that. Let's talk about that soft CEO era.
I love it. Yeah. So I think it's really important to mention that I come from corporate. I used to be a corporate rat for almost 10 years in all my 20s. And I got the structure, like my brain, my mind got the structure of corporate, like literally 9 to 5, SMART goals, the grind. And when I left corporate, I was very intentional. Like I wanted to be a good boss to myself. I wanted to break with those structures, and I wanted to be flexible to myself as a solopreneur. And that was a commitment I did with myself. And it started 2 years ago. And I've been really intentional with that. And on purpose, I said that F SMART goals. Of course, we need goals. Of course, it's amazing that they are quantifiable and measurable, but I'm trying to be really intentional with me on balancing on what can be measured, but also the other more subtle elements of having your own business, which is the connections that you are creating and your deeper purpose of what you are communicating, especially if you're online. Yeah, you have the purpose of landing clients and all that, but your message is spread worldwide. So many people will consume your content. And that's, for me, that's already a beautiful purpose. And it's not that linear. It's not that straightforward of saying, yeah, I post this today and tomorrow I get the output. How many times we posted something 1 year ago and only today we're getting the comments of, thank you so much for your tutorial. Thank you so much for the inspiration. And probably 1 year ago, maybe you didn't even imagine that. Or maybe you were already giving up, or you were already anxious because that immediate outcome came only after. So I think that was the purpose of the post, saying like, let's be more flexible with ourselves and not just focus on the pure numbers. They are a great indicator of that your business is healthy, but there is more than that, especially if you have a purposeful business. Yeah.
I cannot agree more. Actually, one of the reasons why I changed my business name, my business name was originally Yesenia Bocanegra Photography, and after several months of like thinking of what would resonate, I ended up with Focus and Bloom, which is a mix of my passions of photography and then plants. But really, there's a deeper sense to that. It's like
Mhm.
plants where whenever they bloom, they need to focus their energy in that particular area in order to bloom. So it's like,
Mhm.
but you need to put the focus and it's intentionality behind that. And I'm glad that you mentioned the fact that you could post something now, and then maybe you don't really see the impact of that video or that podcast episode maybe a year afterwards, or maybe a little bit longer than that. So that kind of speaks to the whole virality versus depth idea, where sometimes we might have, maybe initially we're focusing on these like vanity metrics of, oh, I want to go viral, but
Yeah.
what is actually going viral? What does going viral mean for your business versus sharing depth in your content? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, yeah, that's one of my favorite topics. And actually, when I create content, I talk about social media strategy, but I don't want to talk about the traditional information that it's out there, how to grow your Instagram, how to edit your reels. Sometimes I create those tutorials, but I like to talk more about what's the deeper purpose of communicating online and grounding on that purpose. And we have noticed, or we have realized at this point, that we cannot control algorithms. Like literally, it's something we cannot predict. And if we just rely on trying to go viral or trying to get the numbers and push it so much, we might feel frustrated and overwhelmed, and probably at some point also burned out. That's why so many YouTubers are quitting, because of course you cannot compare the year of like 2021, 2022, where everyone was at home. Of course, they were consuming a lot of content. And then actually, I recorded an episode yesterday about this. And if you compare to last year, of course, all the engagement metrics, even the YouTube AdSense, everything dropped because people were not spending that much time, including ourselves. How many of us were so tired of social media? We were doing detox. We were going out to walk on nature. We wanted to meet friends in person. So we are less time online, at least last year. Like we were like over with being online. And then with that, then how can you manage a business that is relying fully on having those metrics? Probably some people did really well in business in those years, relying on quantity, which is amazing. But I think we can adapt also our business model in a way that we also focus on depth, meaning more purposeful and meaningful connections, maybe building more partnerships that will be more sustainable over the time, maybe having some higher ticket clients, and not just only relying on selling tons of online courses. I mean, it's really, really personal, but some business models rely more on numbers and others rely more on quality and depth. So I think we can dance between the two of them. But it's really tricky to rely only on and like pray or wish that we go viral, our video goes viral. I don't know how much we can have a control on that, but I don't think we have that. If that happens, that's an extra in our business, but we cannot rely fully on that. And I think it's also for our mental health to be okay with the simple purpose that we are following a commitment we have to ourselves of publishing weekly, daily, whatever commitment you have to yourself and your business. That's already good enough. And without the attachment of results. And that, I think that's the most difficult part in business, because everyone talks about results and smart goals, but some things we cannot control and we need to detach that. So I think that's a balance between being really intentional and maybe forecasting or having some projections, but also letting go the need of having the exact same results we are forecasting, because it's online media. There are so many variables to that.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And, you know, you mentioned connections, definitely, you know, death over virality. Um, a great way for you to, I think this is where podcasting comes into play because, you know, there's, yes, now video is, you can say it's the future of podcasting, and you can still see differences in what is a traditional, quote unquote, traditional video, YouTube video versus a video podcast, like an episode
Hmm.
that was like what we're doing right now, talking
Yeah,
head, having a conversation.
yeah,
There's definitely differences in that production, but still, I think one of the cool things about podcasting is that you're really just documenting conversations with people that share similar values and that also have a purpose of helping others. So it's, you know, podcasting is such a great tool for you to create, I guess, in a way, a simpler way to do long form content, which is, you know, it's a great way for you to build out know, like, and trust, to build more share more in-depth content, and not
hmm.
just like a quick 30-second reel of, like, you know, how to do
That's
this and how to do
yeah, yeah.
that.
It's so difficult for me. I don't know. Some people are so good at it, and for me, really, I take for me it's easier to record a 20-minute episode than
Yeah.
trying to record something under 1 minute. I think I take longer on the 1 minute short video of dances and pointing things. Like, I don't know. It wasn't for me. I tried it, but it wasn't for me.
Yeah, me too. Like, and I, let me say, I enjoy doing reels, but it takes forever. And I'm like,
Yeah.
what's the balance? How much is a 60-second reel worth versus, you know, how much content can you really, really put there versus content that you can create in a podcast that's, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and you can then splice that into shorter chunks and then repurpose it and reuse it. So it's like, I think that that's part of, I think, one of the ways that you can start thinking more intentionally, and also by like honoring yourself with and your energy, because we're not 100% creative all the time. There's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
like, there's phases of the moon, there's phases in our creativity.
Yeah, completely.
So let's talk about a little bit of having that mindset of overthinking, because, you know, we're talking about the reels
Yeah.
and how sometimes the reels could take a little bit longer, but you just said it's easier for you to create a longer form content.
Mm,
So, like, let's talk about that mindset of avoiding overthinking, and how
mhm.
we can, like, put into practice some tips to help us get in that mindset of, you know, honoring both the
Yeah.
analytical but also the how we're feeling, the emotional side of things.
Yeah, I'm a big, big, big fan of the minimalists. I don't know if you have watched their documentary. It's really cool. I try to be every time more minimalist. Like, I like to declutter. I like to detox. I like to get rid of things that are not serving me, are not useful, and I try to do that in my business. So I started with a really basic setup, and I think that helped me so much to overcome perfectionism, because the more layers we add, because we try to be professional, right? Like a bigger mic, a better cam, blah, 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 that gives us kind of more mental clutter, or like more content for our perfectionism to kick in. But if we have something very, very simple, it's okay, you will try to focus on some things and make them professional and make them look good, but then you don't have that much room for overthinking. So that's how I personally started, literally with my phone and with a little mic, and that was it. I didn't buy a cam, I didn't buy anything else. I was recording in my living room, and that video is one of the most popular on my YouTube channel, and it was on my living room, sitting down on the floor. I was just telling I think it was a review from a meditation called Jose Silva method, and with my phone. And but that happened only 1 year. Like this month, I'm like replying to a lot of comments, and it's so beautiful to see, like, oh, thank you so much, blah blah blah. But that was 1 year after I recorded the basic setup. So I think one of the things that helped me to overcome perfectionism is to be really simple, to keep it really simple, to have the most simple setup, and then we don't add a lot of layers of complexity to our recording workflow, and even edition too. So if you are not that much into edition, and at this point you cannot afford having a team, then probably you want to create simpler videos, maybe these kind of conversations, or this will be also edited, but the edition is minimal. But if you want to have a lot of transitions and like words and emojis and all that, that will take time. And again, the more layers you add, the more you allow perfectionism to kick in, because you have like more, yeah, let's say more content to check and to review before publishing it. So I would say like keep it simple. I don't even have intro and outro for my podcast episodes, because I knew I was like, okay, I'm going to spend a lot of time recording it, and I will just record like this, and later on I will add it. I still don't add it. So maybe it's a nice to have, but you can have the basics. Yeah.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that because when I started my podcast, I started audio only, and then a few months later, I went ahead and just went all with full on video. So I had an intro and outro for my podcast, but what I didn't do is think about the fact that it's for two different audiences. One is audio and one is YouTube. So even me watching my own episodes with that outro, I'm like, I'm bored. Like I
Yeah,
even
exactly.
yeah. So
Because it's
it's like
always the same. Maybe it's good for branding, but if it's really short, but
exactly. So it's like, when you're thinking of when you're thinking of creating content and being intentional behind it and wanting to honor your energy and everything that needs to be done as an entrepreneur or content creator, and you're thinking, well, what platform am I going to, and how, and so you have to be very mindful of that platform, of like how people consume content.
yeah.
One thing that I've been doing now for the past couple of months is actually simplifying the post production, because if I'm getting bored and it's my own content,
Yeah.
I'm like, well, what is my audience thinking? Sorry, I'm serious. I'm being very honest. So I went ahead and just cut it and do a little bit more ad lib, and I still have like a one short couple seconds of audio transition for just branding purposes. But
Mhm.
that's a lot shorter than 38 seconds of an intro with fancy like transitions and After
Yeah.
Effects. Nobody cares.
Yeah, exactly. But that's you find out when you test, right? Like what's important for them or no. And
Yes.
I also realized, because I used to edit more my YouTube videos. The first ones were not video podcasts, they were YouTube videos. But I was duplicating my workload. So I was recording audio, and then for Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and then my YouTube videos. It was fun, but then I was like, no, I need to reuse it. So I need to record in one go, extract the audio and video, and that's it, and then the clips. And then I was like, oh, but I will see. I mean, that was my overthinking mind, or like, yeah, I was a bit concerned on YouTube analytics that people, I thought they would drop, like the time spent that they are watching, it's going to drop because I don't have those super
Fancy.
fancy, yeah, and all the videos. I was even recording like B-roll, which is all these beautiful videos you have in the background when you have, well, when the videos are there when you have the voice in the background, that's the B-roll. I was even recording it when I would go to coffee shops and all that. I love that. It's very artistic, but it was time consuming. So I
Yes.
was doing all that for my YouTube video, the first videos. And then when I jumped into video podcast, I was like, oh, I need to check analytics because maybe people will not consume it. The time spent will drop. And no, actually the opposite. They stay longer, but because the content is relevant for them. So I think it's good to test, give ourselves some months to test, and then you can decide. But we don't know until we test.
Exactly. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with testing, with figuring, with seeing if something resonates with your audience or not. I mean, you won't know until you try. And you won't
Mm-hmm.
get better until you start creating content and start
Mm-hmm.
publishing,
Mm-hmm.
and your audience will actually appreciate seeing that progression of when you're starting and then, moving forward and improving, whether it's just how you're projecting or whatever that is. So, it's you have to start from zero, period, and be okay that you're gonna be okay testing out things, and then you'll find your groove, you'll find your flow of what actually works best. And
Yeah.
you don't have to overcomplicate podcast creation. You don't have to start with creating an hour long episode. Actually, lots of stats or recent stats on podcasting say that it's between like the 20ish around so
Oh,
minute.
cool. Okay.
So it's great. And you can make a podcast of 5-minute episodes, be
Yeah.
done. And that's
Yeah.
great, and be very successful at it. So it's
Yeah.
make it your own.
Exactly.
Make it your
Exactly.
own.
And actually, I think that's kind of my hypothesis why so many people are quitting YouTube. I don't know if they really mean it, if they literally are quitting, or maybe they are just
Taking a
attempting
break.
or yeah, taking a break. Exactly. But it's because they overcomplicated it, and then they added so many layers and so many expectations of how the final product should look like. And maybe, as you said, like maybe one day you can just record a 5-minute podcast episode or 10 minutes, as long as you the message you want to communicate, you want to convey is there. That's good enough. But that might be very stressful, especially also when you have a big team and you need to pay salaries. I can imagine that also is stressful for them. And it depends, no, like do you want to have a big team that they edited and then they are managing your social media, or maybe you want to keep it simpler. Maybe you have some freelancers but you don't have this big commitment. It's really personal how you want to manage your business. But the only thing that I mentioned, and I think we shouldn't have unrealistic expectations, because sometimes we see those amazing forums and the sets and we want that, and then we feel ashamed, like, oh, but I'm recording in my living room and I don't have like 3 cameras. It's like, yeah, but they have a huge team and they have to pay all their salaries, and that might be for some of them, it might be stressful when the YouTube AdSense dropped. Maybe they were also like a little bit anxious because maybe they were getting some money to pay salaries from there. So it's really personal. But yeah, my point here was like, you can make it as simple as you want, and there you can set also the tone of your channel. I always say like, oh, my episodes are very natural, and I don't like to super edit and super script. So people who come to my podcast or my YouTube channel, they know I will make mistakes. I'm not gonna edit. Okay, only if it's something really big. But if I mispronounce one word or another, I would need to keep editing all my episodes because I don't speak English like super properly, native level. So, but they know that up front, and I think that also relieved a lot of pressure from me, saying like, hey, it's gonna be very natural, it's unscripted, it's unedited. I try to make them live, so they are like, oh, okay, I know what I'm subscribing to. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Ali said, I love this conversation, and I could not, I would love to continue with this, but where can people, actually, before this question, any like final thought, like, yeah, any final thought for anybody who's wanting to start a YouTube channel, a podcast this year?
Write down in a big, like, I try to put it like in a big blank paper, the purpose. What's your purpose? No, the purpose of your channel. What do you want to communicate? So probably the purpose is, let's say, to inspire others to start creating videos online. Okay, that's my purpose. And then from that big purpose, you can have legs, like little legs, and those can be your contents, right? Like one leg can be a video about how I create my videos in less than 1 hour, another about how was my journey with as a business owner. So everything is tied to your purpose, and make it visible, like in a visible place. If you have a vision board, normally now I'm not at my place, but in my living room, in my own flat, I have a vision board, and next to it I have the purpose of why I'm communicating. Because of course I have some bad days and I'm like, well, yeah, but really, who will watch this? Blah blah blah. And then I have these, big team days, like, oh, I'm down or whatever. Then I look at that and I'm like, okay, yeah, that is the purpose, and everything I create is related to that purpose. That's my main message, and I think it's very strategic, but also it's very inspiring for yourself. And if you don't know how to break it down in legs, then you can hire Yesenia or me.
Yes.
Because that's what we are for, like really helping you with this kind of brainstorms, yeah, like this strategy. If you have like a lot of ideas and then you don't know how to put it together, maybe you need help. That's also completely fine, like to have like someone who helps you to get started. That's also very useful. But if you want to do it by yourself, yeah, just have this big purpose or big why, and then all the legs of content and or videos which are smaller pieces of your bigger why. And then with that, I'm sure you will have content for the year. Like I'm sure you have a lot of content. And if you don't, then I don't know if you, I mean, if you say like, yeah, but I don't know what are my topics, then probably maybe you want to, I don't know, spend some more time like really thinking about researching exactly. So, but I'm sure like most people who are watching and listening, they have tons of ideas. They are also creative entrepreneurs, and maybe they just need like to shape it. But it's really, I really recommend to attach it or to tie it to a bigger purpose. So that will keep you going.
I love it.
Yeah,
And also validate all of your wins, even if they're small.
completely, completely. Yeah,
Even if they're small. You recorded an episode, that's a win.
that's a huge win. Yeah,
You
this is a
published it,
win.
that's a huge win.
Oh yeah, yeah. Where do you feel the most resistance? Like, is it in which part of the creative process do you feel? I mean, which is the most enjoyable for you, and which is the most that you feel?
Tedious. The most enjoyable is actually this, the recording,
Yeah.
the actually doing it. And also like the research portion of like planning things. I love to
Yeah.
plan. I love spreadsheets. So I like planning ideas and like connecting this episode with the other one and
Mhm.
everything. So I really enjoy that. The thing that I resist the most and is anything that has to do with post production, like even writing editing notes or like designing my Canva templates. And even though I have like a gajillion templates, it just takes me a long time. Like the perfectionist in me definitely
Yeah. Yeah.
is there. And I like yesterday I recorded an episode in my office, which is it's a much simpler set than this. And the episode with came out really great. Like the content was great, but
Mhm,
I
mhm,
did
mhm.
not like how it looked. And I
Oh.
told my video editor, I'm like, you know what? Let's leave it like that because the
Yes.
perfectionist in me is fighting. So
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
it's everything that has to do with post production is like where ugh, I feel resistance.
Yeah. You feel resistance. Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. I agree fully on the first part. Like my favorite is doing the pre-work, like the prep. I love having the notes. That's why I love my guests, because it makes it really easy to research them. Like I don't even need to research them because I've been consuming their content, right? So for me, that's done. Also for my solo episodes, I try to bring questions from my clients, so it's also easier for me. And recording. The biggest resistance is in distributing the content, because
Ah,
I watched it so much, like that I'm tired of seeing my big face. Like, again, really? People will be so tired and bored of my big face. But then it's like, no, because they haven't been watching like your video like for 2 hours as you just did when you edited, or
yep.
or when you reviewed it. So it's gonna be the first time. So I think that I also want to get better at like distribution, because there's a lot of valuable content, and sometimes I'm like, well, it's out there. Well, no, we need to push it a little bit. So that part.
Beautiful. Ali said, how can people connect with you?
Well, you can go to my Instagram and just type in Alitzel, Altzel Guerrero. But I think I'm gonna pop there like on as Alitzel. Or you can look for my podcast, that is the Soulful Entrepreneur podcast, on Instagram, or just Google my name, Alitzel Guerrero. I'm there somewhere. Yeah. On YouTube, Instagram. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so very much, Arisa. Muchas gracias for being on the show. And everybody, I'll be linking all the links to connect with Arisa in the today's show notes. So check this out and I will see you on the next episode. Take care.